Hello everyone and welcome to Drive To Win. I'm your host Justin Bell, and of course I'm here inside the Wynn Las Vegas in this beautiful SXM studio, and the show is brought to you by the Wynn Las Vegas, but also presented by Mobil1 for the love of driving. Well, the honeymoon is over, most definitely, in some ways in Formula One, because so much is changing. We have teammates getting a little fractious together, so much to discuss. I have a rather interesting show this week. I have the one and only, uniquely polarizing Guenther Steiner joining us from Italy, but I also have in studio my co-host from the talk show, Tommy Kendall, is joining me, a real-life human. The last person to sit in that chair was Jay Leno. There you are. How do you feel? Funny?
Well, I feel like, it's impressive. You know, you're kind of the king of Las Vegas. And
Siegfried
thank
and
you
Roy.
for having
I'm Siegfried and you're Roy.
But impressive place. And like you said, there's plenty to chop up.
Plenty to chop up. Well, before we jump into it, 38 Formula One races have taken place at the Hungaroring. It's always a track that brings the action, those fast sweeping corners, and very tough to overtake. It's also, interestingly enough, been a place where many drivers have had their first win. Damon Hill, Alonso, Button, Heikki Kovalainen and Esteban Ocon. They've all had their first wins there. So it's an interesting track from that point of view. But we know how the race ended up. But boy, it was a journey to get there. Oscar Piastri took his maiden Formula One win. He's 23 years old. He's the first race winner born in the 21st century. Think about that. The fifth Australian to stand on the top of the podium in Formula One, and the 115th driver ever to win a Formula One race. So, World Championship Grand Prix, that is. He didn't look that happy about it at the end. He'll sound it on the radio. But I'm sure now it's sunk in, and there's many reasons that he was a little muted in his celebrations. Second place was Lando Norris, another man that didn't look too happy about making the podium, whereas last year they would have given their right arm to have had a podium finish. Now, of course, they just expect to win. And Lewis Hamilton, his 200th podium, that's a wow moment. 200th, and he's only done 345 races or something. And even him in his post-race interview was like, when questioned about the fact he doesn't really care for records, he was like, that's a pretty good record, and it must sit pretty well. But it wasn't plain sailing, and there is so much to talk through. A little bit of off-track action to talk about before then. Kevin Magnussen, he is leaving Haas. He's been there a total of 7 seasons, some great races. I have really enjoyed watching him race. He, like I say, he's an animal out on track. He must be the hardest man to pass, and I'm sure wherever he lands up, he'll do well. I do know, having talked to his great mate, Renger van der Zande, top sports car driver, Formula One's taken a toll on him, and he wants to spend more time with his family, but he also wants to get back to the top of sports car racing. So who knows? A lot ahead there. Ollie Behrman, he is in at Haas, and he did so well when he subbed in for Carlos Sainz with Ferrari. So I think that's a great hire. And remember, when a guy of his amazing talent at his age gets taken on by a team like Haas, it's really a training program. It's going to bring him up to speed with all the systems, all the way Formula One needs to operate. So at the right time, he'll go in with the top team, probably Ferrari. And of course, the end of Max Verstappen's team rumor mill about him changing because Dr. Marco is staying through the end of 2026 with Red Bull, which really has cemented that deal, because Max would really only be able to trigger his exit clause if Marco left. So I think a little bit of stability there will be a good thing. Carlos Sainz, well, there's crickets. We don't know anything about that. But he's got to make a move pretty soon. I can't wait to actually ask Guenther Steiner about what he thinks Carlos should do, but the options are getting slimmer. Anyway, very cool. Well, TK, here we are, right? I'm going to intro you properly, right? Because it's been a long time.
Please do.
Tommy Kendall, Hall of Fame recipient. He was one of the winningest drivers in Trans Am, multiple SCCA, IMSA GT, Trans Am champion. He had an enormous shunt in a prototype at Watkins Glen that pretty much ended his career, certainly made him walk with a limp. But just as he was really being groomed to join the top ranks of NASCAR, he would have been great. He was maybe going to step in the shoes of the amazing epic driver Dale Earnhardt Sr., but we'll never know, will we? Because he ended up in the TV booth. We ended up working together, and then it all went down the toilet when we started the talk show, and we became co-hosts.
But a fun swirl down that toilet, wasn't it?
Right ways or left ways, I don't know.
Depends on the hemisphere.
Depends on the hemisphere. Well, thanks for joining us. I mean, it's really cool. You know, we're here for meetings and stuff. I know that, but I thought I do this monologue on that's why it's called a monologue.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
You're usually all the first-time winners at Hungarian, and I know you got a little bit of a cheat sheet going there, but I'm impressed.
Thank you. I actually prepare for this one. Not my strong point normally. Well, you sat at home. You are a racing fan through and through, but you also do it like I do, from the perspective of having been a driver, and you know all those nuances. It doesn't matter what level you're at. I think the in-car dynamics, the stresses, the team manager on the radio, your crew chief, run us through the race a little bit from your point. That first lap, let's talk about that first corner, because it all set the scene for what was to come.
Well, you know, like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get smashed in the face. I mean, racing, we're used to that. You can have your plan, but the starts are so chaotic. And, you know, it really set up the drama because Lando, for all of his skills, hasn't been able to get away from the line. He hasn't really messed it up badly, but just enough. Exactly.
Five poles and never finished the first lap in the lead.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, you know, Monaco. It's not quite as bad, but whoever gets to the first corner first is odds-on favorite to close it out. And so a lot happened between there and the checkered flag, but that's really what set things going. And, you know, it was almost like two different races because the first pit stop when McLaren made their choice is when they had all the information available to them, and then some things changed in a major way, which turned it into a bit of a mess for them.
What do you think? Do you think Max had a little pre-planning on, I'm just going to stick it wide open, go wide on turn one and rejoin? I mean, he didn't lift, buddy. He was I think Alonso was the guy that kind of pioneered that sort of thing. Is you make a show of it and you go and your bailout is actually maybe even better. Yeah.
And so you have to make a show of, I really wanted to stay three wide all the way on the outside, but once you just foot down, the next thing you know, so it's kind of a low risk way because he gave it back, but he still slotted it into second. So it really is not, or it slotted into third. So it's not a horrible way to go. Rather than having to fight into the next corner. If he stayed on track or lifted there, who knows where he would have been.
Yeah. I still fall sucker to the proximity of the cars and the pit wall and the things at the start, even though I try and describe it to people that haven't been behind the wheel. When you're in a car, you're not looking at the whole picture. You're looking at the guy either side of you, in front and behind. It's a very small window you have, right? But Oscar going down up against the pit wall there, I mean, inserting himself between Lando and the wall in open wheel cars. I mean, those are ballsy move, but when you're in it, it's not quite as bad as it looks.
Well, you're seriously charged up, and the cars are way safe. But even when they weren't as safe, you did some of the same stuff. Now, in their case, because they are so safe, and because it's virtually impossible to pass there, even though every fiber of you is saying you should lift, you have to train yourself, premeditate it, really, no matter what happens, I'm not going to lift. And sometimes it's a crash, sometimes at the last second they hold and they leave a couple inches on either side and you get through. So, it was amazing. I mean, Lando didn't get a bad start and he was trying to cover, but Piastri did exactly what he needed to do. He alluded to that at the end. We'll get into that a little bit. He made it really hard on the team because of the difference in pace after that pit stop, which is something that people I don't think are putting enough attention on because that's really what happened.
Yeah.
In that incident with McLaren.
Exactly. Well, we'll dig into that a second because you had some epic rivalries in your career, and I did too. There are certain drivers that you somehow, if there's going to be something go wrong, it's the two of you that are going to hit each other, right? And we see it in Formula One all the way back to Senna and Prost. I mean, you see these battles. When I saw Max, when he was behind Lewis, I'm thinking he just was so pissed off. You saw him get, and I thought now the fireworks are coming. I mean, I think he can do things in a car, on that subhuman, no, above human level. Superhuman level, not subhuman. And he gets there and he dives down the inside, I think with a lot of space, and then they clip. And of course it's Lewis and Max again as they go by, two of the best drivers in the world.
Well, I think I'm sure he raises his aggression and his focus and his skill when you're competing with arguably the best of all, I think the best of all time, actually. And so, but there's this dynamic. We hear a lot of talk about moving under braking, and that particular incident was really borderline. I think Lewis made a slight trajectory adjustment as he went to the brakes, not in braking. Now, Max was going to go 30 feet deeper. So in his mind, he moved under braking because you think about the difference in brake application, it's probably 4, 5, 600ths of a second when they're traveling at that speed. And so he was Lewis was angling in, here comes Max down, and they kind of just, neither one of them turned the wheel.
But the lockup, you lose so much.
Well, he had committed, he was going to do the famous Verstappen dive bomb. And in the past, like you saw when the championship was decided, the rules are such that you can do the craziest dive bomb, and as long as you don't go off the track on the outside, it's fair play. And so Max has turned that into a patented move. And so he was going to do that. Well, by Lewis changing his trajectory and breaking in a straight line slightly into the corner, he can't release the brake and still get it stopped. But Max is coming with this huge head of steam. So the cake was baked back here. And it just, unless one of them was willing to release pressure and alter course, it was going to end up that way.
And the angle of his car,
Yeah.
I mean, the rear wheels were 8 feet off the ground. I have no clue how the drive shafts handle that when they come back
That
down.
might be the most impressive thing about the Red Bull. You see some of the incidents that Max has been in and drives right through them. So that's, race ender for a lot of things. But that, not only is that car crazy fast, not as fast as it was, but also really, really, it might have to do with how they've made them so that they can bang the curbs the way they do. It might be a function of, but that's a weird load that's imparted because when you do the launch, it's a different one than they would experience in normal course of action.
Just super exciting. We have, as I think we're going to find out, no way to predict who's going to be doing what in the next race, which is back to the best years of Formula One. And we always have to go through a bit of a rough period before we get, or dominance, which isn't rough if you're the dominant one. And you did it in Trans Am, but you sure like winning, and it's up to them to beat you. But let's now talk about what happened with Oscar and Lando. You said it, and it seems to have been, now we're finding out more, it was the start that was the catalyst for everything. Whoever, at the beginning there, which seems very difficult for me to preordain the pace of a race after that. You're presuming both guys are going to be equal on pace.
I disagree a little bit because at one point they said you're allowed to race papaya. And so I don't know. It'd be interesting to see exactly what the deal was. Where the thing went wrong was to cover Lewis, they had to stop Oscar first. And so they expected him to then be quicker on fresher tires. Well, Lando is so good. It's turning out to be kind of his superpower, the way he can generate pace as the tires wear in the race. And so it didn't happen. He just, on older tires, drove away from Oscar. Now, but they had just promised Oscar, don't worry about it. We're going to make it right. Now the situation, it's their worst nightmare. Now, you think about what leads to that. Formula One, with all the money that's spent, you can only pit one car at a time. Every other racing series has a dedicated pit crew for every car. Here, it adds a crazy element that you wouldn't have expected, but it's what set this thing going. And it just got worse. So I think they were allowed to race, but once they promised him at that stop when they covered, then they felt like they were bound to that.
Yeah, and great point about McLaren, because they haven't been a front-running team with two cars. We watched Red Bull come in a couple of races ago and do a double stack coming in the pit lane. I talked to Ruth Buscombe about it last week. She was telling me about the intricacies of those moments and how they have to do it. Ferrari are used to doing it, but McLaren have not had to do that. So they backed away from the risk of a double stack. They just didn't want to do it. The other teams are used to it. And this is one of the comments, and believe me, McLaren will be back on their feet very fast. It doesn't take long to get yourself back into the winning ways. They're winning, but the whole team has not had to experience that. And you know that. You felt that when the team knows you're going to win every week, everybody from the refueler knows that there's no refueling. But, in sports cars, they know.
Well, and another dynamic this is why Michael Schumacher wanted a teammate that didn't really threaten him. This is why Max Verstappen, as much as it drives Horner crazy, likes having Perez nowhere in the mix, because they don't have these situations where they have to make these. You had a few with Red Bull in the past where and Max didn't like being told you've got to help Perez out. And so, but very good point that they haven't been in this situation to be making the decisions over and over and over. And it's subtle, but it's, and if you look at it, their decision all the way along the way, it's hard to second guess them. You could argue, I mean, if you don't cover that stop on Hamilton, you have a race like Verstappen. That's what got them in trouble, was they thought we can go longer and Max is going to be able to get by him between Max's genius and the Red Bull's DRS advantage. Didn't work out that way. So you can't really second guess what McLaren did, but I get why Lando's like, yeah, tell him when he gets to the back door and knocks, I'll pull right over. Well, he just drove away from him. So
what would have happened? We talked about it last night. If Lando had said straight away, yep, he can go by, and then he sits right up his chuff saying, now Lewis is catching us. They would have had but then I think that would have triggered the next thing, which is, the faster car. You can't lose the win because you're playing
they
team
100% would have if Lewis entered the frame, but there was still a pretty good gap there. So, it's a tough one. It's funny, the difference, like when Max was having his little tantrum on the radio with Giorgio or Giampiero, it's funny. You Brits can say nasty stuff, and it's like, oh, he's cheeky. If you're the Dutch version of cheeky is you're a dick.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where even Lando, he wasn't happy, but it didn't really reflect as badly on, whereas it looked like you needed to give Max a Snickers bar. He was just, and I don't blame him. It went from bad to worse. And when you're a driver, people don't understand the pressure under the wrist, strapping yourself in there, and the teams do, and which is why they let some of that stuff go by, and they don't take it personally. Like, how does his engineer let him talk to him that way when you're also as good as Max Verstappen? So it's such a great race, and everyone wants things to be nice and people to get along, but thank God they don't, because it really adds so many wrinkles to this.
We love it. I've got a few notes on some of the radio transmissions. We need you to save tires. Bullshit. And we want to let Oscar through. Well, you should have boxed him first then, surely, said Lando. It doesn't matter. It does for me. That's what he said. Then he was pleading. He said, remember, Lando, you proved your point and it really doesn't matter. And then 3 laps later, he went, I'm fighting for this championship. I'm trying to protect you, mate. And then he says, you're going to need Oscar. And I think that's when it bought him. It was a little bit of a slapper on the wrist. And, meanwhile, Max is just rude and pissed off at the other end of the scheme. I mean, I can't say everything, but this is how they put it. He was sarcastically saying, it's quite impressive how we let ourselves get undercut. It's completely effed my race. And then he said, that's some gentle introductions, and don't give me that bullshit. And he just goes off and off and off. It's like a beep fest, right? All the way down. I can't even read it. When you win, and again, I want to ask Guenther this. When you're a winner and you're winning, you can do what you want. You can be out, you can chase girls, you can play Sims till 3 o'clock. The minute the pressure's on, you come under scrutiny for everything you do. I mean, we've experienced that, right? You win, there's no excuses. I think that's my definition of winning. No excuses needed. I'm seeing Max start to show his cracks.
Well, he's the same guy he was, but and on one hand, you're saying, I don't think he really cares. He probably does get on social media. He probably does see some of this stuff. I think at the end of the day, he doesn't care that much, which is part of why he is how he is, and it's how he got to this point. But you're right. It does attract the barbs and the arrows, and you just get a lot more latitude when you're winning. So nothing's really changed. He was a punk before. He was a brat, but he's the most talented brat you've ever met. And so now it's hard to not say Red Bull. When I was on the show last time, they were so dominant and it was boring. I said, well, they're setting a benchmark of excellence that when they finally get beat, it'll mean something, which is what's so great about Formula One. They don't do balance of performance. They don't pull people back. If you're going to clean everyone's clock, you're going to clean everyone's clock, which I totally appreciate. Newey not being there anymore. It's one guy of a team of 100, but it's hard to not say all of a sudden they're under pressure. All of a sudden they're, they don't have the gap where they can always take the safe thing and still make it work. It's really interesting to watch that dynamic come in, the fracturing in the team. You've got the Marco Verstappen versus Horner with the whole scandal. And it really is the world's greatest soap opera besides American politics. But it really is the ultimate kind of action sports reality show. And so, now McLaren's a little different. They're British. those guys really do have a good rapport. I don't think Max cares if Sergio likes him. You know, it's like, you mean nothing to me. This is my team. I can do this. Different dynamic within McLaren and different personalities. It's really, I think they'll, and Lando quickly, if he was not going to get over it, I think you would have seen a hint of it in the post race. But when he said, no, I lost the race on the start, he's not happy with being told to move over, and he was going to make them tell him. That's why he kept escalating. It was like negotiating with your 13-year-old. And they were going to, and eventually he was going to say, you're going to have to tell me not to do this explicitly, not like, hey, we hope you do the right thing and so forth. And so I had to give a race win up once at the end of the season. So I'd already clinched the championship. My teammate could get second in the championship. I'm like, second, who cares? Second's the same as third. Well, when I retired, I was, I think, 2 wins short of Mark Donohue's record. One was that win, and the other one was one that was taken away for a driving infraction after the race that I didn't feel was justified. So wins, even if you've got a lot of them, it hurts.
Yeah, and I love the fact that DC on F1 TV, which is how we all watch the race, I love those guys. DC said, you know, when Alec Jake, who's been a guest on the show, he was like, you let Hakkinen go by. You were told to, and DC said, I would not do it again. It set the tone in the team that he was that he had preference. He was the number one. I mean, that's DC 20 years later, so, you know, it sticks there. Well, TK, thank you for that insight. Thanks for breaking that down. Stick around, because I want to talk about Spa coming up this weekend after we bring on our guest. Well, hey there, race fans. Justin Bell here. What is it about a race that's so exciting? Is it the breakneck speeds or the constant pressure? Is it the ever-present threat of danger? Or is it simply the driving? Well, think about it. There's no phones, there's no laptops, no screens, just the world's greatest drivers, cars, and the ultimate freedom. Yep, definitely for me, it's all of the above. Mobil1, for the love of driving, and visit loveofdriving.us/drive to win to find out all about it. Guenther Steiner, well, love him or hate him, he is the guy. He was the star of Netflix Drive to Survive, and pretty much one of the most polarizing figures in the Formula One paddock. He is a motorsport engineer. Actually, he didn't complete his engineering degree, but he certainly caught up when he became a team manager at Haas Formula One. He was also managing director of Jaguar Racing from 2001 to 2003, and then, of course, went on to be a technical operations director at Red Bull Racing. His tenure at Haas was, of course, the one that we all focused on, especially as he got into Drive to Survive, and his famous pit lane antics were really made everyone want to watch this very compelling viewing. His book, Surviving to Drive, A Year Inside Formula One, has been a bestseller, and that's really what he's been spending his time on since he left the grid. However, he just told me he has a new book coming out called Unfiltered. If you can imagine that, Guenther Steiner's Unfiltered, which will be coming out in October. So a lot to look for. Guenther, welcome.
No, thanks for having me. And it took quite a long time you were thinking unemployed must have a lot of free time, you know, and then you find this unemployed, which is busier than before. So, but no, we finally got together, Justin. Yeah. So good.
It's so funny you should say that. It's like every racing driver that finishes their career generally starts to get busier than ever before. Like Jensen, I mean, he's all over the world doing everything. Everybody seems to get busier when they leave their primary motorsport job. I guess we're addicts.
Yeah, it's one of the things, and I didn't expect that as well. You know, you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna take it a little bit easy now in the next months, years, you know, and then all of a sudden you start and you get busier than ever. But I think it's also a good way to stay in touch with what you have done for a long time in life, and just keep on doing it, just a different position, and it's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know from your social media. I mean, you've been doing book signings, you've been running around. Are you going to every race, or are you sitting on the sofa like us?
No, I'm going to about, I think, a little bit more than 50%. I'm going to the next 5 races because I'm doing work for RTL, the German TV, yeah. But I'm not going to all of them. That's too much.
Yeah, and of course, a big shift. What's it like for you, having gone from, you know, you're so involved when you're on the pit box and every decision in the team, and then you're sitting looking at it from an outside perspective. Talk about that transition, because, I mean, you were so deep in the trenches and suddenly you're not. Have you enjoyed elements of that? Has it given you a different perspective on Formula One?
Yeah, it gives you a complete different perspective. But now I'm one of them, which tells everybody what else what they're doing wrong, because like that is what like it was with me before. Now, joking aside, I mean it's good. I quite enjoy to sit there, and normally I wouldn't say I know the 100% of what's going on, but I would say 98% I can. I see what's going on in a team, and when they make certain decisions, you never know everything because you're not in the meetings, but. It's quite interesting, and as you said, it gives you a complete different perspective of. It opens up your view, because when you're working in a team, you've got these tunnel visions. The only thing you think day in, day out, just about your team, what you need to do better. You work hard, and you don't look left and right anymore, which I think it's actually a bad thing. And for me, it's a good thing. It shows you that there is a world outside your own team in Formula One, quite a big world, which I didn't know it was there, but also it gives you what other teams are doing and much more, because you can think more about it, because you don't have to worry about hundreds of people working for you. It gives you just the view, the 360 view of everything, and I quite enjoy it in the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure this is a weird question, but if you could go back to your old job now, do you think you'd do it even better because you're able to take this different perspective? It's just it's like drivers. When you step out of a car, it's almost like Kevin Magnussen. He got out, went to sports cars, came back, and I would say he was better when he came back. What about you? Would it be the same?
I would think so, because the only thing you need to be careful. I would have learned that one. To keep on looking at a wider angle, not just down the tunnel, that's what I would do better, just look at the bigger picture all the time, because when you get in there, you get so dragged into it, so you don't see anything anymore, you just see this tunnel vision, I need to get there, and by having experience now being outside of it, and as you said with the drivers, look at Nico Hülkenberg, he was 3 years almost out of Formula One. He did a few races as a reserve driver, but he came back, I think, a lot stronger, but not only driver-wise, but also mentally, because he now when their situation arises, he says, yeah, I've seen this before, but I wasn't in it. I see it from outside. And I think we all learn sometimes taking a step back is taking two forwards.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting, isn't it? We all do that. And I definitely think being able to watch Formula One in a more holistic point of view is a privilege that a lot of the team people don't get. But can you believe in the short time since you left Haas, just what has changed inside Formula One? You left in the Red Bull Max dominating era, and now we have 4 teams, arguably, that could win a race. What do you think about that? Give us your overview on that.
It's crazy, because a lot of people, the biggest problem I always spoke with people, especially in the US, in the beginning of the season, will it be again a dominance of Max? And you try to explain, it could be, but it's not a given. And people's like, yeah, but he dominated, so it will be boring. And as you said, boom, from Monte Carlo onwards, everything, it's wide open. You never know who of the 4 teams is going to win the next Grand Prix. I have no idea in Spa who is going to win, because it is so wide open. The last race in Budapest, the McLaren was the best car, but will it be in Spa? Maybe not, So it's things changing so quick in Formula One, but they always change so quick. But now with these changes of people which can win, everybody can see it. It says, wow, what happened here? Nothing happened. It's just Formula One. It can change from one day to the next.
Yeah. So let's talk about Hungarian. It was arguably one of the most tense-filled races that I've seen in a long time. Right from that first lap, there was so many elements, and I discussed it with Tommy Kendall, who's my other racing driver and also my co-host on another show. We just talked about and broke down the race a bit. But a lot happened on that first lap that set the tone for the race, especially with Oscar taking the lead. Now, we didn't know sitting at home that they had this agreement, right? That's what made, for me, the McLaren radio transmission so frustrating. Tell me what it's like from your side. You know what's going on because you've had to put those orders in place before. What were the dynamics at play there?
So what I would say, normally what you do is who is leading in turn one is the leader of the race, for a team, if you've got a 1-2. So, and that means normally that you can pick your strategy if you're the leader. So I think that they all, at some stage, they got a little bit concerned about Lewis's pace, and they decided to pick Lando first, so he's in no danger that Lewis could overtake him somehow. I don't think that was possible anyway, because the pace of the McLaren was just so much better. And then obviously they found themselves in the position that Lando undercut Oscar, and Oscar then wanted to go back to his position, because that was the agreement. Who is first in turn one will be first to pick the strategy, but he couldn't because they had to give it to Lando. So I think they confused themselves a little bit. And you've been racing long enough. You need to learn winning as well. Excuse me. You need to learn the winning, and that is part of it, because McLaren, I think they were just like, well, we are 1-2 and we are pretty good position to finish 1-2 here. Is this real? Let's make sure we don't mess it up to lose a position. And then this happened. So I think in the end, they made good for it. But it was like a lot of people were like, yeah, but Lando's leading by 4 or 5 seconds, how much it was before they let Oscar Piastri go by. Why they do this? But that is what normally do in a team.
It's like you say, they are in their tunnel. It's very hard to look outside of that tunnel and see the bigger. And of course, when you're at home, how easy is it to play armchair boss? But I was thinking, question for you: Do you think like Andrea Stella should have come on and imprinted himself into that conversation on the radio? Like, Toto would have done, right? If it had been George and Lewis. Why did he just leave it to the engineer to make that call and keep hammering it to Lando?
What you do normally, you've got one voice for the driver. There's no, and I mean, I know Andrea. I don't know him this well, but I know him long enough that he's a very calm, he's not like, as you just said, Toto or Christian. I don't think he interferes. He let the process take his way, and the process was the race engineer will tell you what to do, and that's why he didn't interfere, and also maybe he thought if he interferes that he doesn't get the answer he wants, so then let somebody else deal with that. He will for sure have instructed the race engineer or Lando what to say, but it's just it's a character thing, and maybe Andrea didn't want to go on the radio, just to tell him what it is, and I think they've got a very good team dynamic at McLaren in the moment, because Andrea is a good leader in my opinion, and he just sticks to what they agreed, because if he goes in and starts to, when it becomes an argument, it's not good. I mean, it was a little bit weird when Lando didn't answer on the radio, but obviously he was thinking, he said, I think before I answer, because otherwise I give them the wrong answer, and they could upset somebody.
Well, knowing I was going to get you on the show, I was trying to imagine what you would have said.
I was trying to avoid it. That's why I said, yeah, Toto would have said it. I mean, I would have come on the radio, because my patience would have run out if the driver doesn't answer. Hey, buddy, how about an answer? Or something like this. But, everybody has got his style. And, in this situation, if I would have ever been in a lucky position if I want to, I would have been for sure very excited about it and very hyped up about it.
Yeah. Oh, we know how hyped you would have been. So here's something I've never asked a team principal. When you're there, you have these drivers. We look at them as they are world-class, highly paid athletes, best at what they do, but they're also young kids. How much of your job when you were at Haas was like the boss or the babysitter? Because some of these guys have only just left home almost, and they are young with the burden of the world, with all this pressure, the economic pressure, the pressure to perform. What was the dynamics of that relationship?
The dynamic is it's something in between. Sometimes, as you said, you need to be the boss, and sometimes you need to be the babysitter. You try it in all ways, and most of them have got somebody with them, a proper babysitter, as we would call him, and you try if you don't get through to the driver, you try to explain him. And if they are good, these handlers of the drivers, they can bring it across to the driver in a good way, because being the boss is not always, they don't want to listen to him. They want it their way, and somebody needs to explain them. And sometimes you just haven't got the time to explain them because, as I said, they have to learn so much in such a little time sometimes that they actually need to be outside of the racing to understand why you're telling them what you're telling them. That is part of it because they have never been exposed to things like making decisions. The only thing they were always asked for is to drive a race car, but not like that it's a team. What is important for a team? How is the financial structure working? Why do we do things how we do them, and why we do them different than you did them before? So it's sometimes very difficult. And the biggest one normally is when a young race car driver comes to a Formula One team, before you always race for yourself, because the team is secondary. While in Formula One, the team is primary. The team is the most important thing.
Yeah. And of course, that's what we're seeing now. The manufacturer championship, that is, if you're Red Bull, you're like, this is where it's going sideways, right? When everybody else was in chaos and Max could win every race, really the Perez thing wasn't a big factor. But McLaren are going to catch up, right? I mean, my prediction is they're going to not be outside the top 5 with 2 cars pretty much to the end of the year. How do you handle that if you're Horner and Marco? I mean, what do you put in place to insulate yourself against losing the manufacturer?
I mean, looking in if you have to change the second driver. I mean, that's what you need to look at. I mean, it's, as much as I don't like to say that because Checo, I think, he's a great guy and he was a very good driver, but at the moment he doesn't perform as he should for one of the leading teams, if not the leading team. And as you just said, he needs to bring points home because losing the Constructors' World Championship is the worst which can happen to Red Bull. Think about it. 3 months ago, they were like, oh, they will be world champion. No, I mean, if they continue like this, it will be tough for them to be world champion this year. So I think they obviously. Christian and Dr. Marco will look into it. What do we have to do, or what can do best to avoid to lose the world championship? Because in the moment they're leading it, in the moment they're winning it, but they could lose it, So they need to roll their sleeves up and do something about it. And if Checo is not doing it, I think they will find a solution for it, putting somebody else in that car.
Yeah, totally. Can you give us an idea of we always hear hints of, and I know it's insider stuff, but the economics, the financial reward for every driver's point, but more importantly, manufacturer's point, it is exponential, right? Especially to small teams, but also to Red Bull. If you win the manufacturers, or McLaren do, it's economically a huge boost, isn't it? I mean, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's tens of millions of dollars, 20 million of dollars on the top there between coming first and second, But it's not only that, it's also for sure there are bonuses in with the sponsors. If they win the world championship, they get the bonus from them. So it could be up to $50 million difference between winning and coming second, But it's not only that. For a company like Red Bull, money is not everything. It's not like the smaller teams. It's much more important than money. The bigger teams is more like the pride, to show we are world champion. For Red Bull to say we are world champion, or for McLaren as a car manufacturer to say we are Formula One world champion, there is a big you almost cannot describe what it means for them because they haven't won them for not won a championship for a long time now, and now winning a championship, how that would boost maybe their car sales or their image, being Formula One world champion when your main business is selling road cars or sports cars. So it's not only what you get from Formula One, from F1, as called it prize money. It's the image as well, the image which then will make money in the years to come.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So at the beginning of the year, you mentioned it kind of a minute ago, when Red Bull as well was winning everything with Max, they couldn't imagine not winning the world championship. And I sat on this show right here and I was like, Max wants a fight, but he's so strong mentally. I think he can handle any fight that's brought to him. But if you look at the weekend, you listen to the radio transmission, you see the way he's talking before and after the race. Is he cracking a little? I mean, and you know his personality in the pit lane far better than anyone outside it. Is he exposing his weaknesses now? I mean, is this going to be a little downward slope for him?
I mean, you could see it. I mean, we all have got, when we get under pressure, it's easier to make mistakes. The guy which makes the least mistakes, I always think, is Lewis. you pressurize him, the guy but rarely makes a mistake. But Max, I always said it, when Max is under pressure, he will start to make mistakes like everybody else. But as you just said, Max is a fighter, and I think he made the mistakes now. Now he has to live with it. I'm not just winning a race. I need to fight for the win. And I think he's one of the best fighters, and he will fight for everything. And he will roll his sleeves up now, and we will see the best out of Max in the coming races, because he wants to win. And we remember when he was not, when it wasn't a given that Max is winning a race just a few years ago, how much of a fight he put on for position, and how cool was that at the time. So I really look forward to this one, because I always think Max as a racer, there is very few like him around, which when he rolls his sleeve up, what he can do with the car. Obviously, in the last race, he got a little bit over-animated with everything, because it hit him. I'm not in the best car anymore. There's somebody as good as us, if not better. So he didn't like that, and therefore maybe he made his mistakes, but he will go back, sit down and see what do I have to do to win races again. And that is what he was going to do in the next races, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, good. I mean, you just have to see the way he attacks. You sort of see him hype up to the next level, don't you? And you can see just the way he drives. It comes with, he can do things the car isn't even supposed to. But when it comes to, the way Max is out there, when he's winning, you kind of tolerate, I'm sure, as a team owner, anything the driver does, as long as they win. Chasing girls, spending time on their yacht, whatever it is, running around, playing video games and sim racing until 3 a.m. When you're winning, everyone tolerates that. But now they're talking about it from last weekend, as in, he was up all night. That's a tough one, right, for the team owner, the team manager?
Yes, it's tough for them. And as you say, if you're winning, whatever you do, it's the correct thing you do, because you're winning. You cannot do wrong. It's a very strange thing, but it works like this. So, I heard the story of him playing video games at 3 a.m, but I don't know how long he slept. I don't know what time. Nobody has asked that question. What time did he come to the racetrack? So it's difficult to judge people for what they do. And some people need more sleep. Some people need less sleep. And but obviously it doesn't look right, but it could be still right, because that is what he does. Because some people before a race or something, they are not sleeping well anyway. So it's better to distract yourself with doing something you like to do than laying in bed and not falling asleep and overthinking it. So and I don't know these details. I didn't speak with Max, and I would have spoken with Max. I wouldn't say what really goes on in his head. But it's like he should also not jump to the conclusion, he cannot be in his best condition if he was up until 3. We don't know. Maybe the guy just needs 3, 4, or 5 hours of sleep a night anyway. I have no idea. I'm not going to ask him that how much hours of sleep he needs. So, but I think obviously it doesn't look good if somebody says, he was up until 3 at night because I saw him on the video game. So
yeah. So you bought, like, you, as you say, Nico and Kevin, and you saw, Kevin was very entertaining to watch this year, and I love seeing him in sports cars when he was there. I actually like his driving style. It's like a terrier, humping your leg. Even he just doesn't give up. But you're in a great position to enlighten me to the difference between a driver, I know it's down to the car, but a driver at the back of the grid all the way to Max. They are the top, right? There's a couple of other guys that are in there, obviously, like Lance, because of his dad, but he's driving very well. Describe the difference, really, and how slim it is between a Max and, you got Ocon, you got great guys, but across the grid, what is the delta between them, or is it infinitesimal?
It's very small. It's very small, Justin, the delta between them. And I think a lot of the delta is in how they accept everything mentally, and you're at the right time, in the right car, in the right place. It's a fantastic feeling. And if you are, I don't know, look at Valtteri Bottas. He won races in Formula 1, more than one, and now we look at him and say, he's not fast. It's just like, he's just in the wrong place in the moment, and he gets judged where he's not, in the moment. So it's very difficult to say, but they're all very talented. And I even think Lance Stroll is very talented, Is he Alonso? Maybe not, but he sometimes beats Alonso, which is amazing, because Alonso is one of the best racers out there. So the delta is very small. But I think, look at Checo. He won more than one race in Formula One, and now he cannot get out of Q1 without wrecking the car. It's like he didn't learn to drive in the last 6 months or 3 months, because he finished second quite a few times beginning of this season. It's just like the situation he has to deal with. He cannot, I think, mentally digest it. It's just too tough to him, and that makes he overthinks maybe things, and then his talent cannot come out. Maybe you put him somewhere else, all of a sudden you've got a different Checo Perez again, the old Checo Perez back. So I don't know, but it's very tight, and very little takes to be on top or being last in the moment.
And when a rookie comes in, and I guess that's why we see like the junior drivers, and they're getting their FP1 turn to go out in the practice and experience Formula One. How complex is it? Just give us a perspective on that. For someone to get into a Formula One car for the first time, the systems, the technology, the DRS, the buttons on the steering wheel, that must take a long time to get them acclimated. And that's obviously a factor when they're choosing drivers?
Yeah, and all these drivers, they get acclimated to all the technicalities, what the car is doing, the simulator, and the test of older cars, which they still can test older cars. But the main thing for these young drivers is spending days and weeks in the simulator. That's like you say, the steering wheel. I mean, it's so complex, and you cannot spend time thinking of what you're doing. It needs to be in you. You need to exactly know what you need to do to change something, not thinking it, because then you cannot drive at 100%. So, but they do that in the simulator mainly, because even if you get it wrong, there's no consequences. But once they get in the car in an FP1, I always tell drivers which go in there, you cannot look good in here. You can just destroy your career, because if you go out in FP1 and you try to be, the fastest out there, which in FP1 doesn't mean anything, because everybody's running different programs and you wouldn't know what you're running. But if you wreck the car, or if you make a mistake, the whole world sees you, and nobody will forget that first FP1 you did, and you did something you shouldn't be doing, wrecking a car. You could kill your career in trying to be 2 tenths faster than you actually go safe, still go fast. Obviously, nobody's going slow in Formula One, but do not overdo it. Stay in your very safe, because you could actually destroy your career in a 1 hour practice session.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went and did something, the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I said to my dad, I said, how hard do you go? He says, well, I'll tell you this. No one is going to talk about how well you drove up the hill at Goodwood, but they will talk about you putting the car through the front of Lord March's house. You know what I mean? If you screw up, they're going to know. That's all they talk about.
Yeah. If you finish 15th, 12th, 9th in FP1, nobody really cares. But if you wreck the car, people care. They will not forget that.
Yeah, funny. So what do you miss now about, looking back on it? What do you miss about your old job? What do you miss about being in the pit lane?
I think the only thing I miss at the moment is when the race is going on, or when qualifying is on, you've got a car, you've got something at stake, just that adrenaline. And I think it's nothing different to a driver. I mean, it's like, what you miss not driving race cars anymore. The cool thing is when you go racing, it's the same for somebody managing a team. And I think I've never been a race car driver. I don't have enough talent to do that, and didn't have enough money as well. So, it's just that moment, but I get over pretty good, I mean, I'm not dwelling on it. It's just like, you would have, like Andrea Stella last weekend with McLaren. I mean, that must be one of the best days of his life, being out there competing for pole position, having a 1-2 in qualifying, and having a 1-2 in the race. That is what you dream of, and that is what you work so hard for. And that's a little bit I miss it, but it is not too bad.
Wow. Well, Guenther, it is now time for the Mobil1 Pit Stop for the love of driving. Your pick for the Constructors' Championship, will it be Red Bull or McLaren?
McLaren.
Ooh. Which team should Carlos Sainz go to, in your opinion?
If a seat opens, he should go to Mercedes or Red Bull. If that seat doesn't open, I think he should go to Audi.
Yeah, I agree. And what should Adrian Newey do? Work or play?
I think he can play and look around if he wants to work and if he's motivated still to work and if people give him the right tools to do his work, but he doesn't have to prove anything to anybody anymore.
But certainly if you were a team manager and he was available, you would want to hire Adrian Newey.
Yeah, you would for sure try. I mean, I think everybody's trying, but Adrian takes his time because he can pick if he wants to work at all and where he wants to work if he wants to work.
Yeah. And if you were Christian Horner and Dr. Marco, would you keep Sergio in the seat right now or would you let him go?
I would change something. I wouldn't know if I would swap him around with one of the Racing Bulls drivers, but I would make a change also to help Checo a little bit as well. Maybe I wouldn't sack him, and would just swap him out with one of the two drivers in the Racing Bulls team and see what's going on there, or even put sideline him for a few races with and swap him with Liam Lawson.
Yeah. Great, and give his brain time to relax a bit. So I read your father was a butcher. I'm not sure how much time you spent standing next to him while he chopped his meat, so to speak, but anything transfer from his way of life into your career?
I don't chop anything up. No. I mean, what transferred to my life is my parents worked very hard in their life to get somewhere, and I think that transferred to me. I mean, I don't mind working hard. Whatever I do, I enjoy working and getting on with my stuff. But I'm not slaughtering animals anymore. I never did, basically.
Well, Drive to Survive, it looked a bit like it. Talking about which, in your book, Surviving to Drive, did you really tell it all, or are we going to have to wait till everyone's dead to find out the real stories?
I'm thinking of that one. I maybe wait until I write it and I wait until I am dead and then I tell the full story. That's maybe the better thing, because otherwise I wait other people to die. Maybe I wait for myself to die. Then I say to my daughter, when I'm done, here's the book, just publish it now.
I think that's so funny. And my last question is, who do you call these days? Because you can't call Gene. Who do you call?
I'm pretty happy not to call him anymore, by the way. So I call whoever I want to call and who my friends are. There's quite a few of them.
I love that. Well, listen, thank you so much. That was Mobil1 Pit Stop for the love of driving. Guenther, it's been so fun. Maybe when you come to Vegas, come here and have a drink. Come on the set and we'll have some fun. Your final predictions for Spa? You said at the beginning you can't make any, but how do you think the podium will go?
I think the podium will be one McLaren, one Mercedes, and one Red Bull. And the Red Bull, we know who it is because he will be almost always on the podium, Max. But I think the Mercedes will be back strong in Spa again after what I've seen in Silverstone.
Okay. Well, thank you, my friend. Thanks, Guenther. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you back stateside.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin.
Right, take care,
Thanks
buddy.
for having me.
Well, the Las Vegas Concours is back for 2024. One of the world's most prestigious automotive events takes place November 1st through the 3rd at the Wynn Golf Club right here at the Wynn Las Vegas. A one-of-a-kind and immersive experience, the Las Vegas Concours is an exhibition featuring more than 250 distinctive automobiles from around the world, paying homage to the remarkable cars of the past, the present, and definitely the future. It's a celebration of heritage, craftsmanship, and innovation. The Las Vegas Concours at the Wynn Las Vegas brings car enthusiasts from all corners of the globe to revel in automotive excellence, all set against the dynamic backdrop of the Las Vegas Strip. And who will you find emceeing and hosting the event, on stage, doling out the heavy hardware to this year's winners? Well, take a guess. It's me, of course. So come and say hello this November. For more information regarding recently added rooms and packages, you can visit LasVegasConcours.com. That is LasVegasConcours.com. Well, TK, Guenther Steiner did not disappoint. I actually thought he was quite muted and very grown up, but you know what? A lot of it was for show on Drive to Survive. I think it was very compelling viewing, but also I think if we put him back in the pit lane with some of the antics, it would be just the same. So a good insight.
Big
into
personalities, compelling, really.
compelling, really, really great. But of course, next up is the Spa-Francorchamps, the Belgian Grand Prix, one of my favorite tracks ever I've driven on, a track that can bring so much diversity in terms of track conditions. It can be raining one end and not raining the other. The temperature's definitely going to drop after what they've been experiencing in the last couple of weekends. They've been racing Formula One there since 1950, so it's definitely one of the tracks that is part of Formula One folklore. It's a racer's track. It's also a fan's track, like the Nürburgring. But over here, like Indy, like Sebring, like Daytona, for the 24 hours, it's kind of a cult fan following that goes there. Last year, Charles Leclerc actually had pole in the Ferrari, which makes you realize they were sporty at moments last year, and we had those elements that were really fun. But he finished third. Max was in the middle of the series of dominant runs, but Perez was second. I think you could only dream of being second now, TK, right? I mean, you can't even imagine it.
It's really remarkable that all that has what has happened in 1 year's time, and only when you look back do you realize the perspective. I mean, poor Checo. I mean, Checo is literally just coming apart, unraveled, and so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. But when they renewed him, he hadn't showed. Sometimes they put him on notice and say, "You need to tune it up or we're not going to re-sign you." Well, he didn't tune it up and they re-signed him. I don't know if there's some big commercial consideration coming from Mexico and so forth. I know Max likes having him not be a challenge, but from a constructor's standpoint, it could eventually cost them a huge amount of money. So, but Spa is I finally drove Spa for the first time a year ago. I did a driving trip and we ended at the Porsche GT. It was in a GT3 RS, pretty fast car, nothing like a Formula One car, but man, that one separates the men from the boys.
When it comes to Spa, things to look for me, definitely Ferrari. I mean, Charles Leclerc. I mean, Carlos didn't have quite the same race, but Leclerc is obviously fast when he goes to Spa. They're nibbling at the back of that top 3 and 4. So I think they're not back, but I don't think after Monaco we thought they were going to be. We thought they'd be McLaren, right? But it hasn't been quite so easy. But I think we're going to see them show strongly this weekend. Guenther's prediction was, a Mercedes, a Red Bull, and a Ferrari. I think on the Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren on the top 3. So in which order, no one can predict. Is McLaren really the best car moving forward? Do you think?
Well, it's funny because they optimize, when they choose things like wheelbase and some of this stuff, they know they're going to have places their weak spots and not. I mean, McLaren's been kind of consistently the most, well, it's hard. I mean, at the start of the year, you thought Max wasn't going to get beaten again. So it's really hard to say. And you throw the upgrade cycle, the rates at which Formula One teams iterate is just mind-blowing. And so it's a little bit like the weather in Florida. You think you know what's going to happen, just wait a second. So, it's the best part about Formula One. You're back to a more traditional, super high speed. The DRS is a huge part of the equation in terms of who's more efficient. It's been Red Bull so far. So be a question, can Red Bull bounce back and kind of show that on their type of track, they're still the ones to beat? Or is it McLaren? Silverstone was kind of Lewis he legit won that. The changing conditions probably helped him. My prediction is probably Red Bull. And we'll see if McLaren has closed the gap on that kind of a course.
Yeah. Guenther made reference to the fact that when we talked about Max and his mindset, that Max is a fast study. He is the best in the world right now. And he won't be making the same mistakes too much. I mean, I think you give him a week to recalibrate. Maybe it won't be this weekend. Maybe he needs the summer break coming up for a month to reset the clock. It'll be an interesting thing. Next week, obviously, I'm going to be sitting here talking about the results of Spa. How important do you think we're race number 13 out of 24 for the mindset of the teams going into the back 9? How pivotal is this weekend?
Well, it's not just going to the back 9, it's going into the summer break. And so it's pivotal in terms of morale and momentum and all that kinds of stuff. I'm kind of rethinking my prediction. I mean, McLaren was the team to beat at Silverstone as well. So, I think if McLaren can come out and win at Spa, you got to really question how much trouble Red Bull's actually in. It's still a pretty good sized gap to overcome, but it's pivotal. If Red Bull can smash back and say, listen, we're not done yet, That's pivotal. I think if McLaren could either do a 1-2 or win the race at least, I don't think Mercedes is quite there yet. They're improving arguably quicker than anybody else, maybe. So it really is a cool dynamic. And the best part is you can't say who's going to win.
I love that. Well, I won't be in the studio next week. The studio, now under the management of SXM, is going to undergo a refresh. I wish I could get a facelift at the same time, but they're going to basically be upgrading this whole place. So I'll be doing the show from Los Angeles. I can't wait to see you there. Thank you very much to the Wynn Las Vegas for their great hospitality, as always, and to Mobil1 for the love of driving, and Guenther Steiner for being such a good guest, such a well-behaved guest at that. And Tommy, TK, thanks for coming on the show. Really fun.
My pleasure. This is not exactly tough duty, hanging out at the Wynn with you.
I know, exactly. And I hope you enjoy it too. So I'll see you next week, and then we're going to have a few weeks off for the summer break. Remember, follow us on social media. If you've got any questions for our guests, I'll let you know in a couple of days who that's going to be for next week. Anyway, guys, see you next week.